Nancheng's bedroom. Fu Nancheng also returned to his room. A heartless woman, she really doesn't care if I marry someone else. At this time, his cell phone rang. It was his mother, Mrs. Fu, calling. Mom? Hey, son. Have you and Zhuxi been busy recently? Why don't you come back to see Mom? Fu Nancheng pursed his thin lips. He had forgotten about this. He really likes Zhuxi and misses her, but the substitute game is over. Zhuxi will no longer pretend to be her daughter-in-law. Son, why don't you say anything? Did you have a fight? You didn't lose my daughter-in-law, did you? Fu Nancheng raised his hand and pinched his irritated brows. Don't worry, your daughter-in-law is fine, she's not lost. Then come back to see me soon, Mrs. Fu said. Facing his dramatic mother, Fu Nancheng said, It wasn't me who took the initiative to find her. It was Mom who wanted to see her. He said his mother wanted to see her, but actually he was very happy in his heart. The man rolled up the sleeves of his nightgown a few times, and his hands were stuffed into his trouser pockets, revealing his sturdy arms and expensive watch. He looks handsome and abstinent. Zhuxi's room door. Fu Nancheng, who was tall and long-legged, came to Zhuxi's room and was immediately caught by Zhuxi. Mr. Fu? That's Fu Nancheng. Zhuxi looked at him in confusion. Zhuxi came back, and Fu Nancheng didn't know when Zhuxi was standing quietly behind him. After a while, he asked, What did you buy? Zhuxi came in holding a big box, which was a gift that Lin Zhaozhao brought her from abroad. She asked Lin Zhaozhao what was inside. Lin Zhaozhao winked at her mysteriously and said that she would know after opening it. What are you hiding from? You don't want to see me so much? You let go! Fu Nancheng raised his eyebrows while pulling Zhuxi. Because of the pull, the box Zhuxi was carrying slipped from her hand. The next second, she was shocked to find that the box contained condoms. A box full of condoms. He glanced at the things in Zhuxi's hand, then looked at her. Zhuxi, I wanted to die. Zhuxi, you bought so many things. Can you use them all? Who do you want to use them with? Zhuxi's hands trembled, knowing that he was talking about the big box of condoms. She explained, Mr. Fu, you don't have to worry about my affairs. Need I remind you, we're done. The whole atmosphere was eerily quiet. Zhuxi looked at Fu Nancheng, and Fu Nancheng was also looking at her. Fu Nancheng's narrow eyes had darkened. His bulging throat rolled carelessly. He leaned forward, approached her. His handsome face came closer, carrying with it the crisp and clean scent of fur. Zhuxi's face turned red little by little. It was unclear if it was because of his low voice or because of the way he was, a person who was particularly good at flirting and a walking hormone. She could only frown, but Fu Nancheng suddenly kissed her. Fu Nancheng looked at her clean and soft little face. He hadn't touched her for several days, nor did he hold her to sleep at night. Now, the fragrance from her body filled his mouth and nose. He thought he could do without her, but Fu Nancheng's deep voice was already hoarse. Better with me than others. Do you want to try it? What? Zhuxi looked at him in confusion. Fu Nancheng always felt that she liked to act innocent, as if she had predicted that he would fall for it. Zhuxi finally understood what he was saying. Tonight he wanted to be with her. What did he take her for? The substitute game has been exposed, but he still asked her out. Mr. Fu, if you have physical needs, you can find another woman. After saying that, Zhuxi entered her room. Fu Nancheng stood there and watched her slender figure disappear into the room. He always felt that Zhuxi had many secrets. What did she say? Let me find someone else? She asked him to find another woman? So heartless. Fu Nancheng's eyes suddenly became cold, and his tall body stood up straight, spread his legs, and left Zhuxi's room. The next morning, Fu Nancheng had already left when Zhuxi came down, so it was fine not to see him to avoid embarrassment. She was going to school today, so Zhuxi left the villa immediately. But as soon as he walked to the bus stop, Su Qianru drove a 6 million Ferrari sports car all the way to the downstairs of CC, which was quite high profile and eye-catching. Zhuxi saw Su Qianru's expensive sports car, which was bought by Su Changrong and Lilan. Forget it, it doesn't matter. Zhuxi, are you waiting for the bus? I happen to be passing by and can give you a ride. Su Qianru curled her red lips. Oops, I forget. The new sports car I bought doesn't have enough seats. All right, then Cici, please wait slowly, I'll leave first. At this time, Zhao Qian covered her mouth and laughed. Qianru, you are about to enter CC. You are in a completely different world from an ugly country girl like Zhuxi. She only deserves to take the bus. Zhuxi was about to speak when she heard a car stop suddenly beside her. Zhuxi took a quick look and saw a flamboyant black Bugatti sports car parked quietly on the side of the road. The luxurious sports car, which exuded the smell of money, had attracted the attention of everyone along the way. Su Qianru also saw it. Her pupils shrank and she couldn't believe what she saw. A Ferrari sports car that is more advanced and more powerful than hers. Zhao Qian opened her mouth in shock. Qianru, look at, is it the Bugatti at the previous auto show? It should be worth more than 10 million. I don't know which big shot this car belongs to. I have to go and get to know it. Su Qianru walked out towards the luxury car in front of her. After a few taps on the window, the person inside rolled down the window. Su Qianru smiled sweetly and said, "Hello, madam. I am Su Qianru from the Su family. Do you know me? I'm very familiar with Mrs. Song and I'll be working at CC soon." Mrs. Fu looked at the evil Su Qianru and said, "Don't know, don't recognize, not interested." "I'm here to pick you up!" Mrs. Fu came to pick up her daughter-in-law. Mrs. Fu waved her hand generously. Who? Zhuxi turned around and actually saw Madame Fu. Mrs. Fu came and just got out of the luxury car. She recognized Zhuxi from the back. Su Qianru's eyes suddenly widened. Su Qianru's blood pressure suddenly soared by 200 degrees. How is it possible? This is impossible. Why should Zhuxi? Su Qianru's heart beat fast. Su Qianru looked at Zhuxi and saw Zhuxi winking at her with a smile which seemed to mean she was telling me that she was jealous of me. At this time, Su Qianru discovered that Zhuxi had a faint smile on his lips and was looking at her with a half smile, full of condescending teasing. Su Qianru froze. Why did she feel like Zhuxi was playing tricks on her? This Zhuxi seems a little different from what I imagined. Mrs. Fu took Zhuxi's hand domineeringly. When she walked in front of Su Qianru, Zhuxi deliberately stopped, looked at Su Qianru, and smiled disdainfully. Zhuxi was pulled into a Bugatti sports car by Mrs. Fu, and they left. Mom, why are you here? After calling out Mom, Zhuxi froze. What was she calling out? She was no longer Su Shui's substitute, so she could not call her Mom anymore. Shui, when did you get a scar on your face? Is this a recent trend? Mrs. Fu held Zhuxi's hand and said, "Of course I miss you. Nancheng told me that you came to school, so I came to see you." Mrs. Fu likes her real daughter-in-law, but I am no longer Su Shui's substitute. Mom, Mrs. Fu, I got in the car just now because of the situation. You have mistaken me for the wrong person. I am Zhuxi. Zhuxi had a headache. She didn't expect Madame Fu to visit her suddenly, and she didn't expect Madame Fu to recognize her. Shui, have you changed your name? Mrs. Fu looked Zhuxi up and down. You can change it however you want. I only recognize you as my beloved daughter-in-law. Zhuxi's heart suddenly softened. Now Mrs. Fu's warm palm was holding her tightly, and she was looking at her with a smile. This special motherly warmth was really irresistible. But forget it. I'll call you Cece from now on and go shopping with Mom later. Zhuxi felt that Madame Fu was a very simple and pure person. Others would not recognize her when they saw the scar on her face, but Madame Fu seemed to recognize her at first sight. It doesn't matter whether she is Su Shui or Zhuxi as long as it is her. The softest part of Zhuxi's heart was touched. In fact, she could now tell the truth about herself and Su Shui being substitutes in order to get rid of Mrs. Fu, but she couldn't bear to do it. She didn't want to hurt Mrs. Fu's feelings. It would be better to tell Fu Nancheng about this matter and let him, as his son, handle it. It doesn't matter just for this day. When Fu Nancheng tells Mrs. Fu about the substitute, she won't come to me. Inside Zhuxi's bedroom, Zhuxi took out her cell phone because Lin Zhaozhao called. Did you receive the small gift? As your best friend, I want to give a little gift to you and Mr. Fu. Forget it, that box of condoms happened to be seen by Fu Nancheng. I wonder why he went crazy. She asked Lin Zhaozhao what was inside. Lin Zhaozhao winked at her mysteriously and said that she would know after opening it. If she knew it was a condom, she wouldn't want to accept it. Huh? If so, there's no need to discuss it anymore. Lin Zhaozhao is the daughter of the Lin family. Today she is wearing a yellow rhinestone halter dress. Her brown curly hair is lazily scattered behind her shoulders. She has red lips and white teeth, and she is extremely bright and beautiful. What you asked this afternoon is true. Yesterday, Su Qianru did say that she was going to see C, and she even pretended to be you in front of the lady of Yecheng. Lin Zhaozhao and Zhuxi have been best friends for many years and know everything. At this moment, Zhuxi supported her chin. Her beautiful and clear eyes calmly looked at Lin Zhaozhao and said with a smile, "That's just right, I'll go too." Zhuxi thought of something and suddenly smiled. Su Qianru, if you land in my territory, don't even think about getting away unscathed. I must avenge my grandmother. Lin Zhaozhao glanced at Zhuxi. The girl's eyes were clear and bright. Even with a scar on her face, she was still very likable. Preview next chapter. Madame Fu silently took a step back and stretched out her hand to push Zhuxi forward. Son, it was all Cece's fault. Being pushed like this, her slender body rushed forward and directly into Fu Nancheng's arms. Zhuxi's palm-sized fair face bumped straight into his arms, touching his clear, cold and hard masculine aura, and her face suddenly turned red. Where is Mrs. Fu, who just said she would stand in front of her to protect her? The man was still furious. He grabbed her slender arm with his cold white fingers and lifted her out of his arms. Stand still! Zhuxi puffed out her chest in dismay. He stood in front of her with his tall stature and long legs and started scolding her like he was scolding a child. Fu Nancheng looked at her. Do you know how precious my time is? I just came down from a high-level meeting. As he said this, he glanced at the Ferrari sports car that had a big bulge on it. Do you know how much this series of sports cars weigh? This sports car with front and rear drive is not suitable for girls to drive. You only know to buy the expensive ones.